Hello guys, and welcome back to another Star vs. the Forces of Evil episode. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at Season 1, Episode 5 and 6, Monster Arm, and The Other Exchange Student. While I will say these episodes are better than the last two, I'd say they're only barely better than the last two. I think Monster Arm works better than The Other Exchange Student, but they're still kinda... So, Monster Arm. It starts off with Marco practicing karate, right? Because he's got this tournament up against this Jeremy kid. And right off the bat, I want to point out something I actually always liked that this show did. The fact that Star isn't just set to one outfit, right? In like most other shows, a character would be stuck to just a single outfit. Marco has his red hoodie, and that's about it. Sure, he can wear like one or two other things, or he can take off the hoodie just to have a gray shirt. But he basically only ever has the red hoodie. And in this episode, we see Star have 3 different outfits in the span of a single episode. Now, I will admit she only rotates between like 4 outfits in total, and we see 3 of them here. But it's better than just having a character wear the same outfit every day like, The Simpsons would. But Marco's practicing and he screws up and ends up breaking his arm. So Star pulls out this giant magical spell book, which, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. A giant magical spell book instruction manual makes sense in this world. And hey, we haven't met Glossric yet, so it doesn't get annoying yet. But she goes through the book and she finds a spell to fix his arm. And instead of fixing his arm, it turns it into a giant tentacle arm monster. Interestingly enough, that's actually the intended purpose of the spell. It's really interesting that way. Which, yeah, we'll be talking about this soon enough. But yeah, so Marco has a giant monster tentacle arm. That's not a bad premise for an episode. He goes to school, he's stuck with it, he doesn't want it, right? And Star has no idea how to undo it. But he ends up beating up a bully and saving a nerd. Why is it that all bullies are either named Kevin or Lars? Right? Like, those are just bully names, because this bully is named Lars. It's such a reoccurring thing. We see it all the time. But yeah, now that Marco's beaten up the bully, he's now Mr. Popular. He's getting all the girls' attentions, including Jackie Lynn Thomas, his big-time crush, right? Of course, everything's going great for him. It's the standard plot of an episode like this. What else do you expect? And meanwhile, Star is trying to create a reverse spell, something that can undo the monster arm. And she just blows it up. And yeah, it makes sense that Marco wouldn't want to undo it, right? Especially, like, it makes sense for him as a person not to want to undo it because it makes him popular. But it also makes sense not to trust Star because, as far as they know, she screwed up the spell even though she didn't. And she clearly can't get a reverse spell correct. But we see that the monster arm can actually talk. And I'll admit, it's not the greatest design. Like, it's just a mouth on the arm. It doesn't look that cool, but I guess it works. We see the next day, Marco's decided he's going to use the monster arm, profit off of it. And I like how he brings up Star's hypocrisy of, oh, you can cheat by using magic, but I can't cheat by having a monster arm? Yeah, no, that also makes sense, and I know they're trying to. This episode is trying to teach the cheaters never prosper message, which we'll get back to. It's not the greatest teacher of it, honestly, because it's not helped by the fact that Star always cheats, but Marco has to fight this Jeremy kid. And meanwhile, Star has finally created her counterspell, but Marco doesn't want it anymore. He wants to cheat with his monster arm, and she's dying inside. Because, yeah. It actually is also good that a show like this is willing to take its, like, main star and represent her in an ugly light. Like, she's not pretty in this scene. And, yeah, that's okay. That's, God, I hate to use the word, but progressive. Ugh. But we see Jeremy, and he's this little punk 10-year-old or whatever. It's interesting because we see Jeremy in the like show's opening, but he has like dark brown hair. But now here he's more of like a light brown or a dirty blonde. I don't know why. It's just something upon this recent rerun, I noticed. It's okay, there's just random trivia. But we see Marco, and I like how they do the whole shadow thing. Right, that's cool. That's a nice visual shot. And we just get the monster arm kicking the kid's ass. Sure. I know the shot looks weird, but the actual thing looks fine. And the monster arm tells him to eat Jeremy, which, okay, it's escalating. The monster arm's clearly evil. That's the point they're trying to pull from this. But he doesn't want to do it. And he ends up having to fight his own arm. Because the arm's evil, and for some reason it thinks it can survive without Marco. I don't get where it's coming from. But Star starts trying to undo it, and she ends up turning everything into arms. Besides for everything being arms, it's not like there's really that many gags. It's just them turning into arms. It doesn't really work. But Marco sacrifices himself into the arms and is unable to do his monster arm. And as it fades away, it's like, I'll be back. Now, I guess I could be forgetting something, but, well, let's spoilers for up to season 3. I don't think the monster arm has ever come back. It says it's going to come back because it's a cliche thing, but it's never actually happened. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that. It's neat in the moment, but I don't think it actually ever has any reason to come back, you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of a thing that happened once, and yeah, we can just throw it away. And then we find out that, of course, as part of teaching our message that cheaters never win, we find out the Jeremy kid has brass knuckles, or, well, technically they're gold. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, and so he's cheating as well. Cheaters never win, yada yada. They both technically lose because they both disgraced karate mall dojos, which I like that it's not like this big, like, fancy dojo. It's just a mall karate dojo. That actually makes a lot of sense. And again, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief that knowing karate will actually help him fight monsters, right? And being just a green belt will. And yeah, that's the episode. It's okay. Some of the things work. The whole monster arm, I guess they get the cheating message across. Sure. Some of the moments work. I like how even it works as a Marco episode, but I like how Star is shown in the episode. Like, she is legitimately trying. That's kind of cool, right? It's a solid whatever, right? It's okay. Next off, we have the other exchange student. This one is kind of a fish out of water episode, but it's also kind of not. It's complicated because, while it does definitely have the elements, it's also feeding into paranoia and, well, showing that Star doesn't fully get Earth, which, yeah, okay. It starts off, the Diaz's, right, they're happy people. They generally try to be happy, so they welcome Star to her 47th day on Earth. They have a party every day. Oh my god, that must get so tiring. But there's eventually a knock on the door, and hey, there's another foreign exchange student, Gustav from Scandinavia. Which, I mean, just pick one of the two countries, man. Sweden or Norway. It's not that hard to choose. The twist is that something's up and Star is suspicious of him, doesn't know if he's telling the truth. I kind of wish the twist was that he kept saying he was Swedish, but in actuality he's Norwegian. Like, the twist is that there isn't a big twist, because we'll get to what actually happens. But as part of this, we find out that the Diaz's have actually taken in a bunch of other exchange students. Like, Star isn't their first one. And this is a detail I've always actually liked in the show, that, yeah, you know, it makes sense that Star isn't their first exchange student, right? Instead of just being like, oh, this is the standard trope that, oh, the parents are going to take in Star, because that's how Western shows work. They're working in that, no, the Diaz's actually do this. This isn't the first time this has happened. They haven't all been magical, but they have taken in other exchange students. They're the exchange student family. That's I've always liked this detail. It only shows up in this episode, and I don't think they ever reference it again. But here in the moment, I actually think it's pretty cool. But we find out about Gustav, what he thinks Scandinavia is like. Penguins, polar bears, right? All that shit. Yeah, whatever. But the entire time, Star is pretty sure that something's up, but she can't figure it out. Again, this goes into our fish out of water thing of not fully understanding what's going on, and she just doesn't trust people, right? She eventually finds some stuff in his bag, but can't link it to anything, so she's pretty sure she's still going crazy. But he's also clearly up to something, so she starts spying on him. And we got the best joke in the episode is, because, right, we've seen Buff Frog in past episodes, so her spying on him, Gustav, from the tree, and Buff Frog spying on her from the tree, I think actually really works, and I think it's actually really funny. Best joke in the episode. But she starts going crazy, right, suspecting that Gustav has to be up to something, right?
Pepe Sylvia, look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia!
She just goes crazy. And again, you can chalk it up to her not getting Earth, because she gets the idea in her head that Gustav is fattening them up to eat them. Again, it feels very fish out of water. And I don't like fish out of water. Again, in small doses. This doesn't work. But she follows Gustav out into the woods, and she thinks she's going crazy and starts to attack him. I actually really like this dragon spell. I think it's really cool. I like the visuals. I like the red and blue. I think it plays off of each other really well. I don't think she ever uses it again in the show. That's kind of disappointing. At least I cannot think of a single instance of her using it again. But she's able to kick Gustav's ass and find out that he's not actually Scandinavian. He's some guy from Bakersfield, presumably up in like Oregon or Washington with all the rain. Right? And it's this really small, depressing town that nobody's ever heard of, because who gives a shit about Bakersfield, right? And that he's just pretending to be a chef from Scandinavia because he wants to be a chef back home and introduce the people to sugar and spice and everything nice, right? I mean, his motivation works. The problem is, if he wants to introduce people to all these like new and interesting flavors, why didn't he just go to Scandinavia? Right? Like, go to these countries, learn about their different cuisines, do the whole thing from Food Wars, right? To become a great chef, you got to learn about all sorts of different cultures. I mean, it makes more sense than what he's actually doing and pretending to be an exchange student. But the Diazes show up, and Star agrees to keep his secret that he isn't Scandinavian. But then, in exchange for keeping the secret, she just tosses him out, gets rid of him. I like that. One of the things that I will admit does work about this episode is the fact that Star is still technically the villain. Because Gustav, even though he's lying to them, and he is technically the antagonist, he's not a villain. He's still a nice person. Star is the villain, and she wins. I can see how someone could interpret that as making her like a bad person or something like that, and it is. But just because she did a bad thing and kind of is a bad person here, she's not actually bad. She's still a good character. She wins, and I think this adds more depth to the character than some people will give her credit for. I kind of really like it. We don't see this very often, but I think it actually really works. And then it ends off with Gustav going to another family, pretending to be a French student. Why not just be French? Why not just go to France, right? I know it's expensive, but you totally get my point, right? And the entire episode is playing off stereotypes, which, not to get whole SJW progressive here, it's a simple stereotype. I'll admit, I don't see the Scandinavian stereotype that often. I see the French one all the time. So I'll give them... No, I'm not going to give them any credit. It's a whatever episode. I don't care for this one either. It does nothing for me. Both of these episodes, while they're not bad by any means, like I've definitely seen worse. I'd argue School Spirit is much worse than both of these. These are still just meh to okay, right? They could be doing a lot more. They could be doing a lot less as well. So take that however you will. But I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, peace.